So I'm Larry Smith, and I'm what I like to call Sidebar community glue. I love to help people connect within their circles and in virtual and live spaces. It's really a role I love. And I am so excited to introduce Sam to all of you all and get to experience the Sam Millunchick experience. So let me tell you a little bit about Sam. He is the kind of person who asks the questions that you're often afraid to face or answer, to ask yourself. He makes you stop cold and really, really think about who you are and what matters most. And then he does not walk away. He guides you to find the answers you need. So some might think of Sam as a consultant or a coach or a strategist. And he is all that, but he's something more. He's like a modern day rabbi for leaders who have the desire and the courage, I think, is an important word, to really think about, to reconnect or connect with who they really are and what they want to achieve, and do so with a really structured authenticity, alignment, and hopefully lasting impact. And, I throw the word rabbi around a lot. Like I have a community rabbi who I've learned from. I have a concert rabbi who always knows the good concerts. I have an exercise rabbi who gets me out on hikes. But Sam is actually a rabbi. So that's the fun part. He's our mental hygiene rabbi. And, I can't think of a better person to also have now transitioned as an executive coach than a rabbi. And I really know Sam in a way that's special because we were in a sidebar circle for many months. And in one of our group sessions, Sam did like a 20-minute version of what he calls mental hygiene for fitness, for peak performance. And afterwards, I said, Sam, that was amazing. You think you could do an hour, for a member-led workshop? He said, Larry, my ideal time frame is 2 days, so I got you for an hour. So with that, I give you Sam.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Larry. Hello, everyone. I'm Sam. Please feel free to hop in at any moment if you have a question, if you want to make a comment. This is not a presentation, it's a workshop, and we're working together to come to some sort of mutual understanding about all this stuff. And I want to start with the stakes, because as far as I'm concerned, the stakes really couldn't be higher. And I want to tell you a story about a person named Farza. He's A16Z founder, built a company called Build Space. And at some point, he closed the company down, and you can read his full letter. It's quite emotive, posted on their website, on Twitter. And there was one line that stuck out for me. He said he was out of love and out of joy. And that was the crazy thing, was that he said he had 2+ years of runway. He was under no investor pressure whatsoever. They had just finished their biggest season for their company. And he walked away because his mind wasn't in the right place. And that's really, for me, the biggest one-line takeaway of this whole session. I'll give it to you up front. We are embodied individuals. We're not minds. We're minds and bodies together. There's a unified system there. And so much of the way that we feel in the world depends on taking care of that mind-body system. And so what I want to do with you today is look at how we take care of the mental side of our mind-body system. And we call it mental fitness, mental hygiene. I'll get into that in a second. But before I do, I just want to tell you a little bit about who I am. I'm a combat medic in the past. I am currently a rabbi, speak every week in synagogue. And a lot of what I'm giving to you here, I've come to through actual implementation and research, because I've suffered with these exact same problems. Because the first time I got up in front of a community to speak, the first time I got up in front of 200 people who were listening to what I had to tell them, my knees were shaking, my palms were sweaty, I talked too quickly. I probably still talk too quickly, but it was a nasty experience. And the first time that I had a community member, and this is a real story, okay? I had a community member who I could sense something was off with him. So I went up to him, I said, hey, we'll call him Joe. I said, Joe, I feel like there's something off between us. Can we talk about it? He said, no. I said, okay, why not? He goes, I just don't like you. Okay, so you really do deal with all types. I've done 100 funerals in the last 3 years alone. And so these are all battle-tested mindset shifts and tools that I have used to get through my own tough times. And so I just want to share them with you. Hopefully something that I'm sharing resonates. And if you have something you want to add, something that's worked for you particularly as well, please do hop in whenever you want. So you'll notice that there were two things in the title. There was mental fitness and mental hygiene. And I want to make a distinction between these two because I think that they're different and both very, very necessary. Mental fitness is what we're going to think of when we think about going to the gym on a daily basis or a weekly basis, right? I don't know how many of you go to the gym. I lift weights. And I know that if I lift weights from, on a Monday, I'm not any stronger on the Tuesday. In fact, I'm probably weaker on the Tuesday. My muscles have broken down. I probably have a lower energy. My body's working on recovering and rebuilding. But I also know that if I take that fitness regime seriously at the end of 90 days or 120 days or 6 months, I'm going to be markedly stronger than I was to begin with. So when we talk about mental fitness, it's exactly the same thing. We're talking about mindset shifts, ways of being, exercises you can do on a daily or weekly or monthly cadence that will enable you to build up a resilience that you won't necessarily feel from day to day. But what will happen is one day you'll go through something and you'll come out the other side and you'll reflect and say, you know what? I actually don't feel as bad as I expected to. Or I feel like I dealt with that better than I had in the past when I encountered that same situation. And that's building mental fitness. So I want to be very clear. Mental fitness does not work from today to tomorrow. You might see a few benefits. More than likely, some of our exercises will upset you. If that's the case, please feel free to take a break. But over the long haul, they're designed to really put you in a different space. And I'm also going to say whatever we're going to talk about tonight is really only the tip of the iceberg. When I was preparing for this, I put together a guide. The guide is over 10,000 words long, and we're just getting started. You're going to get it at the end. So there's much more in there than there is in this presentation. So that's mental fitness. Mental hygiene, I want you to think of like brushing your teeth. We all brush our teeth, hopefully every morning, every evening. We take showers on a regular basis. We change our underwear. We change our clothing. We change our bed sheets. And we do this regardless of how we feel. We do it regardless of any particular thing that's gone wrong. I mean, even if you don't step in a pile of mud, you still take a shower. Even if you're not visibly dirty, you still brush your teeth. So the idea is that there are things that we understand that dirt, grime accumulates on a regular basis, and we need to wash that off. And the same thing is true for our mental health. We all accumulate knocks and disappointments and upsets and things which, they're not huge, but maybe somebody spoke to us a bit rudely. Maybe we flubbed a presentation at work. Maybe, whatever these things are that we do. And these mental hygiene routines are a way for us to just reset ourselves and not allow that sort of plaque and that dirt and that grime to accumulate to the point where actually, hey, wait a second, now a shower is not enough. I have to go to the steam room and the spa for 3 days to really get all the dirt out from under my fingernails, right? And let me tell you, I've actually done that after, coming back from the field where you don't shower for 17 days. It's not a 5-minute shower, it's like a 30-minute soak. So we want to make sure that we're keeping ourselves mentally clean. And another thing I would say here is that, we've all been around somebody who potentially hasn't been the best at hygiene, everybody to their own standards. And that person's not pleasant to be around. They smell, they might look a little bit off kilter. They're not the most pleasant person in the world to be around. And the same thing is true with people who have poor mental hygiene. You can tell it from a mile away. You talk to them and they're jumpy and they're angry and they're snapping at you and they're talking to you rudely. And you're like, but we just met. Like, what's going on? And you realize that their mental hygiene isn't great. And so, yeah, they don't smell, but they're not pleasant to be around. And so mental hygiene is very important for us and also for the people that we end up interacting with. So what I want you to do is take 2 minutes, and I'm going to try and make this as interactive as I can. And whether or not it's in your journal or piece of paper or, a note take on your computer, just write down for me what you're already doing in this realm. And I encourage you, you don't have to share this with anybody, to be completely honest. Because we're not going to do a full audit now, but just to getting a sense of where you are will help you to get a sense of where you want to go. So take the next 2 minutes and just quietly think to yourself, where am I with my mental fitness and hygiene at the moment?
And after a minute or 2 minutes, if you want to share any part of that in the chat, obviously feel free. If you have a chance to share aloud, or if you want to just very much keep it to yourself, also perfect.
Okay, we're going to come back. If there's anybody who wants to share, please do feel free to drop your routine in the chat. Larry says one small thing he does every day is getting outside in the light, which tells his brain to emerge from the fog. Absolutely, very important, critical. Okay, so let's keep going. What we're talking about first, we're going to go in 3 stages. We're going to talk about long-term mindset shifts. We're going to talk about pre-performance strategies, and we're going to talk about the daily mental hygiene routines that you can do, both the routine ones and also SOS tools that you can use when you're not feeling your best and you need something to recover quickly. And the first thing is a little bit of math that I'm absolutely a huge fan of, and this is the 1% improvement every day. So many of us, especially people who are in either high-powered executive positions or solopreneurs, they feel like the weight of the world rests on their shoulders and they have to get everything done and work hard all the time, right? This is like the hustle and grind mindset, which is so popular online, especially amongst young men, coming from certain influencers, the hustle bros, as we call them. And it really seeps into the culture. But I want to give you a little bit of math, okay? If you take a 365-day period and you improve 1% every day for those 365 days, by the end of that year, you'll be 37.5 to 38 times better than you were when you started because of the magic of compounding. And I say that to you to just reinforce this idea that not every day needs to be a big lift. And we're going to talk about when we get to periodicity and when we get to talking about cycles and understanding our natural rhythms, this will become a little bit clearer. But the idea is that not every day needs to be 12 or 15 hours. Some days can be a much smaller lift. As long as you get that 1% in from where you were the day before, you're actually on the right track. And then we talk about this idea of judgment and self-judgment. And here I want to say something which is going to sound probably a little bit, I don't know if the word is rude, but jarring, but it's actually really important. And that is that you're not unique in the sense that the struggles that you're going through, many other people have gone through them. The struggles that you're going through are normal for human beings to go through. It doesn't mean that you're bad or deficient or wrong or whatever, that you don't want to get out of bed in the morning, or you don't want to do the work that you've been assigned, or actually you just can't be bothered to do anything right now. You're feeling a little bit burnt out. All of those things are completely normal. And so therefore I want to put something to you that I'd like you to consider, okay? I want you to consider that there's actually nothing wrong with you at all. You don't actually need to improve. You don't need to change, and you're not bad. And something that I heard along these lines from Joe Hudson, who you may or may not be familiar with in The Art of Accomplishment, he's executive coach, and he now is working with OpenAI. And he talks about an oak tree. He says, think about an oak tree. When is an oak tree good? When is it a good oak tree? Is it a good oak tree when it's a seed? Is it a good oak tree when it's a sapling? What about when it's 200 years old? Obviously, in the context of an oak tree, none of that makes any sense. What does it mean to be a good oak tree? It is what it is. And he says it's exactly the same thing with you. There's no good or bad version of you. You simply are who you are and what you are. And so the first step towards sort of changing this inner narrative, which I assume you have, I definitely have it, so I'll talk about myself. There's an inner voice. And the first step to modulating that inner voice is saying, hey, wait a second. I'm actually okay just the way I am. And I want to give you a tool now. And this protocol comes from a doctor called Peter Attia. Okay. And he calls it, and I quote, the single greatest instance of neuroplasticity he's ever witnessed. And we're going to do this together. What he says is as follows: whenever you feel your inner voice coming out, and he calls it his inner Bobby Knight. Bobby Knight, for those of you who don't know or remember, was a coach for Indiana University, was famously, just like a crazy hothead. He would throw stuff onto the court. He would yell. He would scream. Not a nice, not pleasant energy. So he says whenever he feels his inner Bobby Knight coming out, he pulls out his phone and he records a voice note. But the voice note he records is to a friend who made the same mistake. So he imagines he's not talking to himself, but he's talking to a friend. Hey, I know you messed up today, but there's a few things I want to say. First of all, maybe you were feeling a little bit under the weather. Maybe you felt a little bit of pressure. I know you've done this a million times beforehand. You're so capable. It's not a big deal that you messed up right now. And he says within 4 or 6 months, the critical inner voice went away completely and never came back. And if that's true, that's incredible, right? And so I want us to try this now together. Take 5 minutes, and everybody's going to have something where they got on their own case because of something they did wrong, or they felt that they did it wrong. And what I want you to do is record that voice memo to yourself. Take a couple minutes and talk to yourself as if you were your best friend. All right, we'll come back. It's probably a little less than 5 minutes, but it's interesting. I do that probably semi-regularly, not as much as I would probably benefit from. And it's still so powerful. And also I feel very vulnerable even being that encouraging to myself. It's a bit weird. It's like you're talking to yourself in this really encouraging way. It's and then you wonder, why do I feel so um nervous about being nice to myself? And I think that's a question we all could do with answering on our own time. Okay,
It feels a
let's keep
little
going.
it feels a little awkward, doesn't it? Does anyone
Go
feel
on.
comfortable sharing like out loud just for a second, few seconds?
Yeah, I just responded. Hi, Larry. This is
Hey, Harley.
Harlene.
Good to,
Um,
Harley, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Um, yeah, I just shared in the chat, but there was a sensation of authenticity that made the situation more real, but it was also less daunting. So, and specifically, like I have something I have to do tomorrow that it's a like first time doing a sales call, and I'm scared to death. I'm so scared, and I shouldn't be scared because it's my authentic self. But so was trying to give myself a pep talk of you can do this. It's okay. Worst thing that happens is they don't buy. Which if you don't do the call, they're definitely not going to buy. I gave myself like the Wayne Gretzky talk there. But it just felt it somehow it's like self-validating that it's okay. Like I'm being forced to face the inner voice that is beating me down. I don't know. I don't have the proper words for it. But it's even that small little bit was really helpful. It took the power
Thank you so
away.
much for
That's what it
sharing that.
was. It took the power away.
That's so
That's what
cool.
it is.
That's so cool. Hey, I just want to share, thank you so much for that. I had a moment a couple days ago to my
Beautiful.
Sidebar circle, and I already knew this amazing trick from Sam. I came into that, I was really mad because like very few people showed up, and I came in like such an asshole. I'm like, what's wrong with these people? I was busy today too. And of course, Lauren, my facilitator, and used to be Sam's, just was like, we'll just, use the, and I basically did that at a break, and at the end I just gave this big apology. I'm like, and like I actually felt like not only did I feel better, but like I looked better from apology. I wasn't trying to look better, but like I just felt like it was first of all, a lovely meeting with the four of us. And second of all, I felt like I redeemed myself internally and with this group who I felt very bad about anyway. But I used it in action 2 days ago. So I wanted to share that.
Brilliant. Beautiful. Thank you both for sharing that. I really, especially, Harleen and Larry, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Right. Decisions. So you might be asking yourself, and many people do, why are we focusing so much on the way that we feel? And the reason for that is that decisions, which we all make in our jobs, especially if you're, higher up in the food chain, are not rational. They are always driven by emotion and then rationalized later. And one of the main ways that we discover this is with there was a neuroscientist called Antonio Damasio. You might have read his book, Descartes' Error. And in the book, he talks about a gentleman called Elliot who had a brain tumor in sort of towards the front of his brain, had it removed. The surgery went swimmingly. There was no real brain damage to speak of. And yet after the brain surgery, his behavior changed very drastically. And he ended up getting divorced from 2 wives, lost his kids, lost his job. And nobody could figure out what was wrong with him because his IQ was 100% intact. In fact, he was scoring even above average. And they did every single test. And Tony, Dr. Damasio talked about it in his book. They did every test in the world and they just couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. And then at some point, what they understood was it was something that even Elliot himself mentioned. He couldn't decide what he wanted because his ability to feel things for whatever reason it was damaged from the surgery. And what Dr. Damasio understood from that, and then many other people have sort of proven this later, is that what we do when we make a decision is we have a sense, a feeling of what we prefer, and then we might turn our rationalization on at that point, or we might go with what we prefer and then post-rationalize. So, I'll give you an example, right? If you look around your room, take, for example, 2 different pens, okay, or 3 different pens, and you ask yourself, which one of these pens do I prefer? Now, if you go rationally, list a table of the various features of each pen, they probably all write. They probably all are a similar color. One might be neon pink. I happen to have a neon pink pen over here, and whatever. But they're probably all writing. They're all doing the job. So, what is it that we prefer about them? Oh well, I like the way this one writes, or I like the color of this one, or this is my favorite. What does that mean, a favorite pen? And so that it really proves this idea that the way that we feel, oftentimes, without even our realizing it, will sway our emotions. This is actually a key unlock for a lot of founders that I work with who are pitching investors. I tell them that they have to be what I call emotion maxing. They have to go in there and capture the emotions of the people that they're talking to, and only then can they talk logically, because the logic, it doesn't help when the emotions are on fire. And we're actually going to talk about a little bit of neuroscience towards the end of the presentation about why that is. But in any event, what it means is that if you're not in touch with your emotions, you're giving away a large part of what it is that allows you to move around in the world. And there was a story of these kids in a Polish or Romanian orphanage. I want to say Romanian. That, orphanages are not the most sympathetic of places to grow up. Okay. And they studied these children, and what they realized is that they could put something in the palm of their hands, and they could change out the objects, and the children couldn't identify what the objects were that were in their hands, because they had detached themselves from the feelings in their bodies. Now, we might think to a time when we felt something. We might have felt nervous. And if you felt nervous, you might have felt hot under the collar, or you might have those butterflies right where your diaphragm sits. Or if you get angry, you might feel a tightening in your chest. These are embodied emotions. Your emotions don't live here. They live in your body, right? I'll point you to another book, The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate, again, talking about the embodied nature of trauma and feelings and emotions. And so this idea of getting us back in touch with our emotions is a major unlock for mental fitness. And it actually is one of the stated goals of meditation. So, meditation is like a hot button topic. Everybody loves to talk about it. Everybody loves to say that they do it. It's super difficult to do because we always get in our way. But one of the things that we do in meditation, we're going to do this now together for 1 minute, is called a body scan. Okay, I don't know if you've had experience with meditation or not, but what I want us to do now is, please, first of all, tell me if you can hear. Let me change my share screen for a second. And we're going to go to this body scan. It's just 1 minute, but let's do it together.
So sitting comfortably.
Can you hear that? Yeah.
Just taking a deep
Old
breath
familiar
in
voice.
through the nose
Exactly.
and out through the mouth. As you breathe out, just gently closing the eyes. Noticing how the body feels right now. To get a clearer picture, starting at the top of the head and just gently scanning down through the body. Noticing what feels comfortable, what feels uncomfortable. Not trying to change anything, just noticing how the body feels. As you scan down evenly, noticing each and every part of the body, all the way down to the toes. And then when you're ready, just opening the eyes again.
I'm always shocked when it comes to the end of a minute how you can time travel listening to that man's voice. It's quite something. So that's a body scan. And the idea is that we're taking a few minutes, in that case just one, to get back in touch with the experience of being in our own bodies. And again, as he mentioned, there's no judgment here. And we're going to actually come back to this idea of judging ourselves for our emotions. But just the noticing in and of itself is critical to getting back in touch with how we feel. And so let's keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the presentation today. Okay, now this is one that I always thought was like a religious thing, you know. So in Judaism, we have this idea of something called lashon hara. Lashon hara means evil speech or bad speech or negative speech. And I always thought that was like, you know, okay, it's a good moral thing, maybe, that we need to watch our language and we ought not to talk, you know, gossip about other people. But then I read this book called, it's actually right here, The Metaphors We Live By. And what it did was it unlocked an entirely new level of understanding here. And I want to share that with you. We use language. We use it to describe our way of being in the world, okay? And it really forms the substrate of our minds. So we think in language, we dream in language, we speak in language. And the language that we use to describe things shapes our view of the world. So we talk about time being money. Time is money. So I can save time, and I can waste time, and I can spend time. And we have arguments, our war, so I can lose an argument, or I can be shot down, or I can win an argument. And obviously, you know, this is going to frame the way that we relate to each other when we're arguing, right? Communication is transmission. This is a fascinating one. There's a discrete thing, the message, put into a vehicle, the words, and given to you, by me. So I'm the conduit for this message, which again presumes that there's an objective meaning to the message and doesn't allow for that co-creation of meaning between the two of us. And how about happy being up? I'm feeling really up today. Or sad being down. You know, thinking about it that way can attach a lot of perhaps negative emotion to the whole set of feelings. And so what if we were to talk about these things and many other things in a slightly different way? So instead of time being money, time could be breath. Breath is also, it's not something you can hold on to, right? Just like time slips through our fingers in an instant. Breath, you hold your breath for too long, things aren't going to end well for you, right? So you can't hold on to your breath. But we're not stingy with our breaths. We don't try to keep them. We understand there's a cycle. It's got to go in, it's got to go out. And so maybe talking about time with a metaphor of breathing might be better. What about arguments as exploration? There's a space, a topic, an idea that we want to explore together. So we don't fight and argue with one another. We don't phrase it as war. We phrase it as joint exploration. Oh, that's an interesting direction. Let's see where it takes us. Now, when we argue about something, we're both trying to come to a shared understanding, to a discovery of a new place. What about communication as building? So I'm not giving you meaning that you have to grasp, but rather we're co-creating meaning together. We're building something out of our words. And so I need to give you the tools that you need. You need to give me the tools that I need. We need to share the tools together. Or mood could be music. Instead of being up and down, it could be slow tempo or playing a minor key. Another really good one for this is weather. I'm feeling a bit foggy today. There's no judgment there. Fog is fantastic. Some people love fog. I happen to love fog. Well, at least I did until I moved to England. So changing the way that we speak about things, it can actually be a very powerful unlock, again, for that inner voice, for the way that we treat other people. And so I want to share with you this prompt, and I think Larry's going to put it in the chat. Just, if you can, open up an AI and put these two prompts in. The first is the help me uncover, and the second is reshaping the metaphors. So take a few minutes. First, do one prompt at a time and see what you come up with. Maybe you already have an idea of a metaphor that you'd like to change or a way of thinking about a particular thing in your life. Take 5 minutes, and then I would love to hear from 2 or 3 people what you discovered in your conversation with your AI. Okay, we'll take this 1 more minute to wrap up our conversations. Okay. Would anybody like to share either in the chat or unmute yourself and just hop in? What were some of the metaphors you uncovered? I see Elizabeth has shared some fantastic ones. I really enjoyed the first one that she shared, break up with what no longer serves you. And the hidden metaphor there being life is a relationship. I'd love to know, Elizabeth, if you want to chat here, are you happy with that? Is life being a relationship something you're happy with? Or would you want to change that?
I like that. It actually, so I call myself a breakup artist, and it's really about raising awareness
Okay.
to people that relationships exist everywhere, not just romantic relationships. I really loved your analogy about like the pens, because I've used that before. It's like, if you don't like the way your pen feels, you don't have to settle for it, right? Like you can either pick up another pen, you can change the way you're holding it. So yeah, raising awareness that relationships exist everywhere. And breakups aren't a bad thing. People think breakups are bad, but really breakups create space and expansion and stuff like that. So I am okay with life is a relationship. Everything in life is a relationship.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. Right. Larry.
Does anybody else want
Put it-
to share something, whether they put it in the chat or just share aloud what they saw?
Please.
Well, I put in a phrase from Big Lebowski, that's just like your opinion, man. And ChatGPT said, dude, like you're trying to be in a little bit harsh. But I said, no, actually, Minnie is playful. Then it says, I'm saying, I'm diffusing the tone and saying, let's not take this too seriously. And in that case, another metaphor surfaces, conversation as a game or performance, where keeping things light is more important than winning or proving the point. So that's pretty good.
Okay. Do you like conversation as a game or performance, or would you like to change that?
I love it.
You're happy with that?
Which I'm not afraid to have a deep, meaningful conversation, but like I love playful conversation, fast, East Coast style conversation.
Okay. Anybody else want to share one maybe that they changed, that they reshaped? Okay, fantastic. So I hope that was helpful. And let's move on. I see we're coming up on a little bit of time. So what I'd like to do is, with your permission, skip through a few of these. I promise they're all written out in long form in the guide that I'm going to share with you at the end. And I just want to get to this last tool of this sort of mindset shift before we transition into the pre-performance and mental hygiene tools. And so to take another fitness metaphor, if we're talking metaphors, when you go to the gym, you generally actually spend your time in the gym. Let's say maybe you spend an hour and a half of your day. You spend your time in the gym hurting your body, creating micro tears in your muscles. And then you spend the rest of the next day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever it is, feeding it protein and carbohydrates and fats and sleeping, and generally allowing your body to recover from the damage you did to it so that it can become stronger. And many times we don't build that same cycle or periodicity into our lives in the same way with work or with a heavy lift, a mental heavy lift. We just sort of assume that every single day we're going to be able to power through morning till night and then sleep and then, rinse and repeat and do it all over again. We don't build that rest and recovery in. So there's a few things that I want to share with you. The first is that you have this these cycles called ultradian cycles. And what this is basically that your focus can go in about 90-minute increments. So you have these 90-minute rhythms. And after about 90 minutes, pushing further than that is going to have diminishing returns. So what you could do is set your workday up in cycles of these, at the sort of edge 90 minutes. It could be a little bit less, and then sort of take a reset. So maybe take a 20-minute break, right? And again, the easiest metaphor for us to understand is when you're lifting weights, the more you lift the weights, the harder it becomes every successive repetition to lift the same weight. So you've got to take a break. You got to rest. You got to let your muscles recover. Same thing is true of your mind. You cannot, it's simply impossible to push yourself to the same level of intensity. And I heard a fascinating study the other day. They took this group of Army cadets and they put them through this really rigorous physical performance over multiple days. And then they gave them an aptitude test. And then they gave them the same aptitude test after having let them rest and recover. And so, they were like 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, they were rested for a few days beforehand. They took the test. They asked the soldiers, what do you perceive to have been your better test? The one where you rested or the one where you were after this intense physical effort? And they all said they proceeded to be after the intense physical effort. And they were 100% of them better after the rest. Every single one. And so why do I tell you that? Because we're not necessarily really good judges of whether or not the effort we're putting in is having the outcome we want it to. And so by understanding the body and the system that we are embodied in, we can actually just plan to keep ourselves rested. And so these same cycles, they work 90 minutes, 20-minute break. They work 6 days a week. Maybe you work 5 or 6 days a week, you take a day off. Maybe you work 90 days in a row, you take a month off. Maybe you take 30 days in a row, you take a week off. You have these cycles of intense work, rest, relaxation, recovery. So what I want to ask you to do, and I think Larry's going to step in here and we're going to say this is a sidebar commitment moment, is to just take a few minutes, 3 minutes, or maybe even 1.5, because we're coming up on time. Take 1.5 minutes and just schedule in these cycles. What's going to be your weekly deload day? How are you going to plan out your 90 minute cycles inside the day? Are you in the middle of pushing and working, or are you in the middle of relaxing in terms of your overall cycle? So just take a minute and a half, figure out where you stand, what can you commit to changing, and then we'll move on to some more practical tools.
And if a couple people would commit aloud or in the chat, that'll be awesome. Also, it wouldn't be a sidebar event without 2 things. Well, community, so 3. A survey, it's there. There's also a QR code. Please, friends, everyone does the surveys in your groups. It's hard to get people to do. I put a link in to make it easier than a QR code. Do the survey. Come on, give me a break. It looks good for me if you all do the survey. Survey it any way you like. So do the survey, friends. I appreciate it. And then if anyone wants, and if you can commit to something, maybe you put it in your sidebar goals, maybe you write it down, maybe you commit to a friend here in this Zoom. Accountability is one of the reasons what we do at Sidebar works so well. End of sidebar sermon.
Hey, Larry, I just want to make sure you saw the comment that we left under the survey link. When we click on it, it makes us edit the survey. So I think we need to change the permissions.
Whoops, we don't want that. Okay, thank you. We don't want you to edit the survey. Let me tweak that a little bit. Okay.
Looks like
Okay.
it's
Also, Jacqueline. Yeah, sorry.
yeah.
Thanks, Jacqueline.
So let's use our last 5 minutes wisely, and then and I'm happy to stay on for anybody who wants to ask questions. And like I said, this is all in much more detail in the guide, which Larry I think is going to drop in the chat now or soon, hopefully. Okay, pre-performance. So you're now in the 90 minutes, the 60 minutes, the 30 minutes, the 5 minutes before whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's a board presentation, whether or not it's a keynote, whether it's a tough conversation with a friend or a business partner or a romantic partner, whatever it is that you need to be on the top of your game for. A few tools. The first, but first, before we do that, 1 minute of neuroscience, okay? You'll see this picture of the brain that I put up on your screen. Look at the purple, blue, and green. This is called the prefrontal cortex. This is the newest part of the brain, and it's the part of the brain where we make our sort of executive decisions, right? I really want to eat that chocolate, but I know I'm on a diet. I'm not going to eat it. That's your prefrontal cortex taking charge of the other more primitive, more reactive, more reflexive parts of your brain. The other little arrow here points to a little red ball there towards the brainstem. That's called the amygdala. The amygdala is where your fear, your anger, your anxiety live. Generally, what happens is that, and I'm simplifying to the max, but the amygdala is governed by the prefrontal cortex. So even if I'm mildly scared of something, I'm able to override that and still do it. What can happen is in periods of intense anxiety, anger, frustration, fear, the amygdala has the power to override the prefrontal cortex. When that happens, you are not thinking. Okay, I want to make this very clear. You're just not thinking. This is why, for anybody who's had children or been around children and they're having a temper tantrum, it's impossible to reason with them. Not in a figurative sense, in an actual literal sense, their brains are off. Okay, and the reason that this is the case is because our brain has developed this evolutionary tool to protect us from intense violence, from intense distress, and something which will, kill us if not dealt with. So, you see a lion coming around the corner, your body wants to react. It doesn't want to start thinking about what a lion means and how do I relate to it. What you need to be able to do then in order to reason with your brain is turn the prefrontal cortex back on. Okay, there are a number of ways of doing that. Let's get into them now for the last couple of minutes. The first is something called visualization. Visualization is incredibly important. You can read about how to do it in the guide. Essentially, what you're doing is giving your brain another rep of what's about to come. So you're practicing without actually doing the thing. And the reason that this works is what they discovered through brain imaging studies is that your brain cannot distinguish between thinking about doing the thing and doing the thing. So piano players, their brains light up in exactly the same spots when they imagine practicing and when they actually put their fingers on a keyboard and play the piece. So what they then developed is a protocol for visualizing the thing you're about to do in as much detail as you can, which gives you that extra bit of practice before you actually go into it. Next, try to convince yourself to edit yourself after the fact and not during. So if you're speaking, for example, give yourself permission to evaluate your performance after the performance is over and not during the performance. That way you're not getting in your own way and thinking about what you're thinking about. That metacognition can actually hamper your performance whilst you're doing it. The next is positive self-talk. We spoke about that a little bit. One other very powerful tool that you can use is breath work. Breath work is if the body has a lever or buttons for changing its state, breath work is that lever or button. There's an app that I've linked to by a person called Johnny Miller called State Shift. Download the app, use it to change your state, either upregulate, downregulate. We called it music, so upregulate the tempo, downregulate the tempo, whatever you want to do. Okay, last very, very cool trick. Your hands, the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet are heat sinks for the body, okay? When you feel yourself getting hot under the collar, an easy way to cool down in a second is to take a cold glass, preferably filled with something cold, an ice water bottle, hold it in your hand, okay? Holding something cold in your hand will force your body to cool down. So if you're somebody who's been holding hot drinks, hot tea, coffee, when you're performing, don't do that. That makes your body more hot, more anxious. You want to cool down, hold something cold in the palms of your hands. I know I'm over time. If you need to drop, that's cool. But I want to share these last few points with you. The next one, the last one in this pre-performance.
We go up share so we can see everyone for a minute.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yes. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. And people are hanging. It's great. If you have to go, go. But
Perfect.
Hang for a few more minutes.
The next thing is called 90 seconds to calm. This is something that Dr. Jill Taylor found out, which is that when you feel an intense emotion, it sits in your body if and only if you accept that emotion in for 90 seconds and then it dissipates, okay? If you try to fight the emotion, it will stick around for a lot longer. But if you give yourself, and this is where that body scan is so important, if you feel that emotion and you just allow it to be in your body and you don't fight it, it will go through your body in 90 seconds. It'll feel like the longest 90 seconds of your life, but it will then go away. So you've got to give yourself that permission to feel whatever it is you're feeling, nervous, anxious, upset, angry, fearful, whatever. It's okay to feel that way. Let it go through. That's pre-performance. Now, the last thing I want to share with you is what do you do for mental hygiene? How do you flush out what happened to you? How do you deal with setbacks? Okay, the first thing here is a reframe. Take 365 days a year. Take your lowest 10% of days, the 10% of your worst days that year. That means you're having 36 and a half, 37 bad days. Not only bad days, your worst days. That means that every 10 days, roughly on average, you're having one of the worst days you've ever had that year. Think about that. So if you're having a bad day, give yourself permission to have a bad day. right? Every 10 days, you're scheduled for a bad day, you're due a bad day. And what you can do is figure out, okay, what can I do on this bad day? The worst day that I'm going to have this year, what is, something that I could take care of, give myself a little bit of grace, a little bit of compassion. How do I still take advantage of this? Or maybe not. Maybe I say, you know what? Every 10 days, I know I'm going to have a bad day, or whatever my rhythm is. I'm going to take a break. Okay. A few processing tips. Catalog 3 wins from that day. So a done list. What are your 3 biggest wins? Right? Our brains have negativity biases, cataloging our wins from that day, even if they're small. Hey, I could have yelled at my kid. I didn't. Could have yelled at my wife. I didn't. Could have yelled at that guy who drove past me at the intersection. I didn't. Nailed the big performance at work. Looked super fit at the gym. Whatever it is, log that win. 3 wins. They don't have to be big. They just have to be wins. The next thing is concrete thinking journaling. I'm going to actually just tell you that this is a thing. You can go look at it in the guide. And a really powerful one, and I'll leave it here for the mental hygiene, is creating a power down ritual. So giving yourself permission to stop caring about work, permission to step away from the striving, and allowing yourself to just relax. It could be a brisk walk. It could be 5 minutes of stretching. It could be a warm shower. Anything you can signal yourself to just let go. Okay. Last thing. SOS. I'm ruminating. It's 2 a.m. I can't get back to sleep. I woke up thinking about whatever it is I'm thinking about. How do I get calm? First thing is called cognitive shuffling. Take a word: apple, pear, motorcycle. And for each letter in that word, think of a word. Okay. So for example, we might choose random. R, relax. A, apple. N, Neanderthal. O, M, mother. And you just do that. And what it's doing is it's not allowing your brain to get stuck on anything. You're constantly shuffling the decks. It's like a deck of cards. That's a really practical thing that you can do to get out of rumination right now. There's worst case journaling. You can look up that in the guide. Physical activity is perfect, strenuous, enough that you have to focus. So we've all had the experience where we're walking and we can have a conversation, and then we're walking and we're actually walking a bit too fast to have a conversation. That's where you want to be, in that space where I'm exerting myself just that bit too much that I can't think about anything else. I don't mean go and kill yourself at the gym. Walk up a hill, right? Something where you're out of your comfort zone. And the last tool it's in the guide. It's called perspective flip writing. It's about trying to see whatever it is you're ruminating about from another person's perspective, getting a bit of objectivity stuck in there. I know that was a lot. I know I went over time. I appreciate you sticking with me. If you have any questions,
is amazing, Sam. By the way, I've read the guide. It's the value of that, and your time is, it's priceless.
Of course, and I'm happy to.
People have questions for Sam?
Please, yeah.
Well, I'll just ask you. You're making the transition from rabbi to coach. How long ago were you thinking about things like mental hygiene? Was there a moment in your journey when you're like, I'm having these conversations with my congregants and friends and family, and everybody likes a rabbi's ear. I know that. I'm Jewish. I can say that. And so when did you think, like, I've got something that I can help people to unlock these types of things?
It's a good question. I can't put a particular date on it. What I will say is this journey to becoming the best version of myself mentally probably started when I got married. My wife expects a lot from me just because she's a high value person. And I knew that I had to show up for her in a way that, I couldn't be my same old self. I had to become something better. I had to go to the next evolution. And just her presence launched me on this path, I would say.
Awesome. Any other questions or thoughts before we go? Sam, I should have known that if we started 5 minutes late to let people come in, every second counts, then we would have gone
yes.
over.
Okay.
But thank you all for coming. I feel very lucky to have had this time with you. And the guide is in the chat. I also put it in the chat on Sidebar, where we have the automatic group made, so you have that. If you can't find it or need anything from me, you know where to find me. And as always, it's great to see everyone. I hope the rest of your Thursday is wonderful, and see you again soon in real and virtual space.